Hello, everyone. Welcome to our usual Sunday talk, within the nine-sided circle. This has been our two talk Sunday, which means it's the third Sunday of the month.
And it
If
means
you
that English is optional.
words, yes. So, thank you for joining us. Whether you've joined us twice today, which is very ambitious and we appreciate it, or if you've tuned in for the replay and are catching up with us for the replay for this too. It's all good, and we're happy to have you here. Just so you know, for next time, if our usual time, Sundays at 6:30 Pacific time, that's in the evening, of course, p.m. If that time doesn't work for you, we have our once monthly Sunday morning other talk, which happens at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So you're always welcome to join us at that because we know that we cannot accommodate everybody at each time. So we offer a
What
couple
did
of
we do?
options.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I am the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Yay! And our favorite part, the YouTube spiel. You want to do it this time, Mushtaq?
Do it this time. Hey, y'all. Welcome to our video. If this is your first time here, we welcome you doubly. And if you're coming back, we doubt your sanity, but we're happy to have you. And we would be ever so grateful if you hit the like button, if you like this video. You know, only about 1 in 10 people give us a like. If we get 400 views, we might maybe get 40 likes. So I'd love to up the ratio there. So if you enjoyed the video, just reach over and click that little sucker because it helps us out in the algorithm. We would also be delighted if you subscribed to our channel, and then you can be notified every time we put a video up. And yeah, it's not too terribly obnoxious. So click that like button, hit the little bell, as they say, and all of those other things. You don't have to do that. Just like us. We want to be liked. So thanks for that. And now on with the show.
Yeah. Leave comments, share our videos, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Share our videos with your friends or your enemies or complete strangers. Go up to complete strangers with your phone and say, watch this.
Can you imagine? I don't know. We dare you. Try it out.
I'm a little terrified, actually.
All right.
Don't
So
listen to me. Whatever you do, don't listen to me.
he gets us in trouble constantly. All right. So this is our second part of our two-parter today. So this morning, given that our topic today is Insan al-Kamil, which is in Arabic, that means that translates in English to the perfected and or completed human.
And we like completed better because it's more.
Yeah. And we actually found this morning when Wael was speaking, he's one of our native Arabic speakers. He seemed to prefer the word completed, like it has this
And Osama was
quality
nodding completed too. So
of completion
yeah,
to it. Yeah.
yeah.
So, sometimes when you're talking about like religious and religious adjacent things, there's this obsession with like purity and perfection. I think we will probably touch on that a little bit, why we don't prefer that kind of language in our space. But, we'll get to that. Essentially, this morning was an overview of the history of this term within the context of Islam and Sufism from the perspectives of the greats like Hallaj, Yasavi, and Ibn Arabi. So now we're going to be delving into how this concept, how this little nugget of philosophical understanding of the meaning of being a human and what is our purpose and all of that stuff we're going to be taking a look at that from a contemporary and more universal point of view this evening. Does that about sum it up
Yeah,
broadly?
broadly.
Excellent.
Yeah. This is the, hey, y'all want to be complete? Let's figure out how.
Yeah, like again, practical stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, we have philosophized about it this morning. We have talked about the underpinnings. Now we get to the practical work. Can a human being be complete?
So, if you're wondering about exactly what we're talking about and why this has historically been so important, feel free to watch that video and then come back to this one. But this is the one that allows you to embrace this concept for yourself today, as opposed to it being this highfalutin theoretical concept.
Yeah, what she said. So, where to start? The idea of completion is the idea of moving to the original self. But so we this morning we talked about the idea of Adam and Eve and eating the fruit in the garden, and before the eating of the fruit, they were completely innocent of everything. They did not know good from evil and all of this other stuff.
Uncomplicated.
Completely. Now that is the original state. And the idea here is that we move back to that state, but not as children. They were as children in that state. They were larvae, to put it in an insectoid. I mean, I know that this, again, I've already pissed off a bunch of people. I got taken to task for not understanding Shiism earlier, and it's like, little do they realize. But if one takes the metaphor of the garden, that whole process of encountering conscience and then spending the next life of the planet, as it were, the life of humanity, growing up, learning how to be in that original state, but as an adult rather than a child. And when one can do that, one becomes the completed human. Does that make any sense at all? Yes, no, maybe.
You can give a
Yeah,
yeah,
somebody want to
sure.
argue with me? I'm down for arguing.
Is that a permanent state, or you touch it briefly and then you got to keep building up to that to be permanent?
Yeah, basically, we think of as you grew up as a child, you learn certain things, but it took you a while to embody those things. Like the idea of sharing. When you were a little girl, you maybe didn't want to share your dolly with your friend, but you were instructed in how that was good, and you began to discover that there were benefits to taking on that more adult attitude. Beyond that, the original self is the deconditioned self. In Tasawwuf, we talk about moving from nafs al-amara to nafs al-safiya, to move from the commanding self all the way up through 7 stages to the self at rest. And it's all the same self. But the commanding self is pure stimulus response machine. It's the programming that we have taken on and been given by society, family, personal experience, all of that sort of thing. When that is set aside, then what you have is the deconditioned self. But it now has this matrix of adulthood with it. It has learned conscience. It has learned to understand the consequences of its action. All of these things that the unawakened person doesn't have.
Does that get at an answer to your question, Shri?
So my question is, then we are like this little gamete. We're starting off and we're in a twilight zone until we get that full recognition, because I wonder if we're aiming for something and we don't recognize that deconditioned state, then the work is helping us recognize that, because it's like saying to someone, you'll know it when you see it, but I don't know what
but you won't know it when you see it.
Oh.
Yeah, you will actually be blind to it until you learn to see it. That's the problem. And that's why teachers are so useful. As I like to say, you can do this without a teacher. It is possible. And it is fraught with danger because you have to make all of your own mistakes. One of the most wonderful things about having a teacher is that you can learn from their mistakes. You don't have to learn from your own mistakes. It's like you and I talk, and you can learn from my mistakes. I will proudly tell you all of the stupid things I've ever done and the lessons I've learned from it, so you don't have to do any of those. So that is one of the benefits of having a teacher.
Saves a lot of time and energy
Saves
if
a
you're
lot of
listening.
time, a lot of energy, a lot of stuff that the non-fun things can be avoided if you listen and learn.
That's the hard part of being a child, and that's, you know, the resistance and the resentment of being told what to do and what to eat and how to be and da 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 da. And so that's, I think, part of the maturation process of getting to that state can be painful because we don't like to be wrong.
Oh yeah.
Don't like to be told what to do. I mean, or how to do it, even if it's not like a you should do this and don't do that. It's like, I don't care how you did it. I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah, or like I only want you to tell me what I already want to believe. That's a common one.
Oh, yeah.
That gets people in trouble. And these are things that prevent your growth. And this is not to say that any teacher is ever going to tell you all the straight stuff, because no one is perfect except for God. To be human is to be imperfect, and we also must embrace that. When I figured that one out, it was a great relief.
Yep.
So now, how do we do this? How do we decondition ourselves? Fact of the matter is we've been talking about this now for 4 years, however long it's been, 5 years since we started this channel.
Yep.
The first thing that we need to do is to distinguish between the state of waking and the state of sleep. We just need to distinguish between the two. Because most humans, most of the time, wander around in a somnambulistic state. I love that word, somnambulism, somnambulistic. It means sleepwalking. Most of the people out there are sleepwalkers. And that includes you. No, not you, but the other yous. And we have to know the difference between the two states. Everybody experiences what it's like to be asleep, but we don't notice because we need the contrast. And the simplest way to find that contrast is to ask yourself right now, am I awake or am I asleep? And check inside and see which one is true. Is this a dream that I'm dreaming, or am I awake? And if you do that, you'll notice that you're awake. And in that noticing, you're awake for a moment. You have stepped away from your somnambulistic condition and experienced a moment of awakeness. It's very fleeting. You'll go right back to sleep. You forget about it. You start thinking about something else. But you can do this over and over again. First step is to realize that there is an awake state. Second step is what we call, in English, self-observation. And we have talked about this at length in our various videos on Muhasabah, Muraqabah, and Mushahida.
They typically go by, they have titles that include the word self-observation, self-witnessing, self-remembering,
Yeah.
whatever.
Self-observation is the next step. Once you've realized that you have an awake state, you observe your own behavior. And with the question, what am I doing to go to sleep? Let me describe the patterns of my consciousness that are automatic. I feel a certain sensation in my stomach and I start thinking of food. And I become more and more impelled towards eating this thing. In this case, sugar-free caramels. I want one so bad that I cannot stop thinking of it until I have to get up and go get it. And then I go, and I go to sleep. But we all do this all the time. And we need to be aware of our own mechanical behavior. And that's what self-observation is for. That's the first step, or the second step. Whatever step it is, it's that step. Once we have worked upon that enough that we have some real information of what we do to help us stay anesthetized, to help us stay in the dream state, then comes the very difficult practice of self-remembering. Self-remembering is basically taking that state of I am awake and holding on to it and prolonging it for whole seconds at a time and building it up until you can stay in that state for significant amounts of time, sometimes a whole minute before your mind goes drifting off, sometimes 2 minutes. If you really work at it diligently, eventually you will be more awake than asleep. And this does not take any time away from the rest of your day. None of these things really do. The secret to the Sufi path and the secret to the fourth way is that it is designed to be done in the world. Let me say that again. The secret to the Sufi path, as we understand it, is that it is designed to be done in the world. Does that mean that you don't withdraw from time to time? Yeah, sure. Does that mean when I turn 110, I might dig a cave somewhere and go live in it? Yeah, sure. Kyle might not like it though, but
I'll leave you food at your door.
there you go. So all of our practices are designed to be done in the milieu of life. Our fourth precept, the fourth precept of the masters is Khalwat Dar Anjuman, which means solitude in the crowd, to be inwardly in the work and outwardly in the marketplace. It's much harder than going up into the mountain, but there is no, I mean, people talk about Sufi monasteries. It's a terrible English phrase. There are no monasteries in Islam. There are no monasteries in Sufism. A tekke or a khanaga or a zawiya is different than a monastery. There are places for khalwat, for withdrawing, for doing a retreat. And retreats are part of our way, but they are not permanent. The masters of our path said, do not presume to look special. Do not wear special clothes to show everybody your state. Be normal. Normal is hard. If you can master normal, you're doing good. And they didn't exactly say it like that, but basic idea.
Yeah. And tying back to this morning, right? And I mentioned how even as you're going through all these states and you're like refining your soul and all of that stuff, the end point is to just be normal, to be unassuming, to not lord your quote unquote spiritual development over other people. You're just a person moving through the world and applying everything you've learned to everyday things so that you can be a force for, ideally, for good, right? You've come all this way.
Yeah, as our dearly beloved, not so long ago departed teacher used to say, when you advance upon the Sufi path, you don't get to be more special. You don't get more authority. You get more work. It's true.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
once you have worked on self-remembering, we get to the third very mysterious state, mushahida, self-witnessing, which is combining the inward and the outward and beginning to develop the what do you say it? Inner zikr is not the right phrase. It's close. But so they talk about there being zikr al-jali, which is the vocal zikr, everybody's doing this, which is great stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing that. That's my idea of a good Saturday night.
Aggressive chanting.
Aggressive chanting for sure. Yeah. But beyond that is dhikri qalbi, the remembrance of the heart. And that is one of the two silent zikrs. Dhikr and zikr are the same word, and I switch back and forth because I originally learned it in Farsi and then in Turkish and then in Arabic. So all
All over the place. Yeah,
over the
same.
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the same. So you just have to put up with it. So the third kind of dhikr is dhikr kafi, which is deeper than zikr of the heart. Khafi is like really, it's so deep that words pass away. It's so deep that names pass away. It is the remembrance of essence. And that's what we're striving for. Does that make sense?
Because you know
When,
what?
go ahead, please.
I feel like such an urge to touch on things that we spoke about this morning and
Go for it,
yeah.
please.
So, I mean, this morning we were talking about how the human being is a mirror of the divine essence, right? And this form of zikr that is deeper than words, deeper than anything that can be depicted, expressed, you just feel it, you just know it. This is touching in on that remembrance of the fact that the human being is a reflection of all that exists beyond us. It's everything. And remembering that, we are part of the whole.
Yeah. So once we have gotten to the point where we can create, at least in moments, the remembrance of essence, then you work through the various processes that lead to the final stage of fanaa. Now, most Sufis talk about the 4 stages of fanaa, which they list as fanaa fi sheikh,
Teacher.
fanaa fi pir, fanaa fi rasul, and fanaa fi Allah. We don't. We say that no, because all of those personalities get in the way.
So for those who don't know what fanaa is, that's like annihilation. That's being subsumed
It
in.
is the state. What's the word I want? So it's the event horizon
Yeah.
between the normal sleeping life and the waking life. And you pass through that. You don't stay there. My first teacher said to me, Fana is this. God goes up to your ego and goes, punk.
Flick.
Yeah. And it is annihilated. And within that breath and the next, Allah gives you an ego back, because you cannot live on this planet without an ego. Can't be done. We're not designed to do that. Angels can probably do that, but we're not angels. My mother used to say that to me, you're no angel. And so we get our ego back, but it is the nafs at rest. It is an ego that is made entirely of the attributes of Allah without the crud on them that we put on throughout our life. And we say that there are 4 stages as well, but they're different. We have talked about that a lot in other videos, so I'll just throw some links up for that. There will be a bunch of links for this. There'll probably be links on the end screen and links down in the description and links everywhere.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough links, write me. I'll give you more links.
Yeah, so this is not opposition, but this is in contrast, I should say,
Yeah.
to annihilation in the guru or the teacher or in the prophet, the figurehead of the faith. And
Yeah. And the final stage, we don't call it fana fillah, we call it fana fi zat, or thought, depending on your.
so
Yeah.
the language is different. It's not disappearing into God. It's like
It
the
is the
event horizon
annihilation of your essence,
the essence. Yeah.
God's essence. It's hitting the reset button on your soul. It's going, oh, all that stuff, it's okay. Let it fall away. Here is the awake state. Here is the natural state. Here is the original state. And this is where we would like you to live now. And this is interesting because most of the time it happens pretty quick. Sometimes it takes a little while. A good friend of mine hit fanaa, and he stayed there for a while. And our teacher, and this was not here, this was back in Iran. Our teacher took him and moved him into the Khanega and gave him the job of pouring tea. And he would start making tea and getting ready to put the tea in the boiling water. And he would just stop there and be completely absorbed within the water boiling for sometimes a few minutes. And occasionally people would go, poke, poke, hey, put the water in the tea. And the murshid would go, no, don't do that. Let him process this. It's the only way for him to come completely back to this world. And in about 3 weeks, he was back, completely himself, only completely transformed. It doesn't happen all that often. But that was one reason for having Sufi houses, is because sometimes somebody needs to hang out there for a while. If that happened to somebody here in the States today, they would put you in a psych ward, fill you full of antipsychotic drugs, and work really hard to remess you up. So. So during the Ottoman Empire, they had one of the very first psychiatric wards. And it was beautiful gardens, fountains, musicians, and it was a place where people could come and experience just letting it all go for a while. And as far as I can tell from the accounts that I've read, they had a better success rate than we do today. And there would be, it was mostly, I think, Bektashi dervishes that would act as the attendants. And people would come in, they'd be brought in, and they'd be in whatever psychotic state they were in. And after a little while, they'd be all better. And nobody tied them up or loaded them full of drugs at all. Go figure. But I digress. So along the way, there are a lot of different practices that we use, starting with breath practice. The great teacher Bahauddin Naqshband said, our method begins with breath. Our method is based on breath. And this is true. He came out of the same tradition as us, and he branched off at a certain point, and they went that way and we went this way, and they got all famous and we disappeared. We like that. So
I have a question.
yes,
Sure.
good.
So, or maybe few, I don't even know.
Good. We take all the questions we can get. That way I can stop thinking.
Awesome.
We've done a lot of thinking this weekend, so.
So, in relation to all of what you just shared as far as the practices and stuff like that, number one, how does that tie to that original childlike state that you mentioned in the beginning? And is it that internally or with the divine, the relationship with the divine is more of a childlike relationship, and externally it's in the form of mature adulthood, or is it has to kind of converge into a one thing? So that's number one. And number two, the stages of fanaa, في الشيخ, في الpeer, all of those. How does that relate to? So I understand that in this tradition, we're not necessarily playing around with having a fanaa في الشيخ and stuff
The
like that.
last thing in the world I would want is for you to try and annihilate yourself in me.
Right. So I want you to speak about the difference between what we spoke about in the retreat video, call about Rabita.
Yeah.
What is that? What is the difference here?
The difference there is Rabita does not ask you to lose yourself, to become annihilated in the other. It asks you to connect with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that connection can be very important because it can share energy from the higher to the lower. So there have been times when for instance, I had just arrived in Tanzania. My teacher had sent me there to spend a year teaching. And I came down with a horrible, horrible flu. And I break a fever, and 5 minutes later, he's on the phone. It's like 4 a.m. in California. He's calling, going, "What's wrong with Mushtaq?" And then he gives people instructions on how to take care of me. And that was all through that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Might be just a fun story, but yeah.
And
But
that
it's not seeking for annihilation.
I understand.
Yeah. It's like Noor and I, we strive for that connection all the time. We're not trying to be annihilated in each other. We're trying to be, to create a shared space, a connected space where each of us can support the other.
Yeah, and even be attuned to one another.
Yes.
Yeah. So it certainly goes beyond just like, oh, pat on the back, buddy, here's a hug and here's some broth or whatever. It really is as if we are striving to be very aware of each other without becoming obsessive and destructive to the point of like codependency where you're kind of like disappearing into each other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a different thing. Rabita will allow a teacher to lend you some energy. You can, you're having a hard time making the next step. You don't have the juice to do it. You make your Rabita, you see what's available, and you get a little extra. And then you carry on. It's more like that.
In some ways, I mean, especially with teachers with whom I think, as we talked about, there is that distance of time and space. It's kind of like in the background and you feel it. It's not necessarily constantly at the forefront of your thought, but there is that sense of, I mean, really the best word is connection. There is that sense of connectedness and it feels real and it feels like it doesn't need to be talked about. It doesn't need to be confirmed in some way. It just is.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense. Especially that part when you said doesn't need to be talked about. I feel there are certain things that are they're keeping them in that mystery box or whatever it is, keeps them alive in some type of way. When it's verbalized, it loses its sacred. I don't even know what, but there's something that gets lost in there when it's verbalized. But going back to the point of childlike and that kind of relationship, as far as these exercises, going back to that original Adam innocence, how does that stay? Does that, in relationship to the divine, does that stay?
I think
Is that
so.
what a
I
Hafiz
think it
is?
actually gets better.
That's an interesting thing to think
Yeah.
about. I
Yeah.
think it's almost like, in a way, it's like coming full circle. Like you start out in this childlike state that is uncomplicated, that is not really
Oh, unconscious.
differentiating. Unconscious is
Yeah.
another important word, yes.
Yeah. So you go through all of the crap until you come back to that pure state, but this time conscious instead of unconscious. And you couldn't get there without having gone through the crap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
If you had no nafs, you would never be able to get into the kind of state that we're looking for.
If you
And
didn't
we see
have an
people
ego, yeah.
who have done that. We used to run across that a lot in India. You get these dudes who would go for the ultimate annihilation, but they didn't do a couple of important steps, and they ended up being non-functional. Yeah, and they would sit in meditation, and their students would come in like once a week and dust them off and change the flowers that had wilted, and then just leave them there and come back, and they would pray to them and all of this stuff. But they were gone. They weren't there. They were. And whereas a lot of people thought that that was some sort of good thing, a Sufi would say that the only use that person had would have been as a hat rack.
Yeah, essentially you got to come back to earth. Like our place is here. And I think, again, tying back to this morning, like we are matter and spirit together for a reason. And so being in and to some extent of this world is part of the deal. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a beautiful, amazing opportunity if we're able to see it from that conscious, as you said, childlike place of, wow, this is pretty amazing. I'm so glad I get to be here and appreciate this. The world is your playground. Yeah, did you have any other questions, Osama?
No, that was clear. That was, yeah, that makes sense. And as you're, maybe this is more of a note, kind of like that I noticed that the word remembrance it's like it makes it seem as if it's a mind mechanic. It's something that's happening with the mind, where in fact it is not. So I'll be interested to see if there's another word than I know remembrance. Yeah, dhikr or zikr, like, okay, remembrance, but it's not an activity of the mind. It's not a remembrance like, oh, I forgot this, oh, I remember it now. So that's just something that when I just heard it right now, I was like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, it's not that. So pointing to the fact that this remembrance that's happening is happening at a level that's not of the, it's not a cognition, it's not a mind thing that's like, oh, I forgot where I put my phone. Oh, now I remember where I put my phone. It's not that. Or is it?
I mean, here's the thought. It is and it isn't, right? Like it's not cognitive. It's not just like, oh, I forgot I forgot the words to a song and now I remember the words or something like that. But at the same time, I do think it is almost like, you know, I'm going to use like a weird anthropomorphizing metaphor where, God's like waiting by the phone and we keep forgetting to call. But the connection is still there whether we're thinking of that connection or not. And when we finally, it dawns on us, oh, I could really use that phone call, then it's like an enlivening of that connection. How does that land for you?
Yeah, that makes it, yep, it moves that function to, it makes it more of a heart function, because now there's that connection. Yeah, it's that connection aspect makes it more of a heart function than yeah. I gotta marinate in that a little bit.
So it is our contention that the position of Al-Insan al-Kamil is open. God is hiring. And any of you can fill that position. There is an entrance exam, but we have ways for you, just like you're going to do a college entrance exam, you're going to do the SATs, and you go to a class and they teach you how to do the SATs. We have the SAT class for God. That sounds incredibly arrogant, and I don't mean it that way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and there is not a admittance rate. Everybody can get in. You just have to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yusuf.
And it's cheap. It only costs you everything.
Ooh.
Yeah, what a bargain.
Yeah, I want to ask, why is it so important to be awake? There was a guy in the movie Matrix, in the first one.
Yeah.
I can't recall the character's name. He wants to make a deal with the agent and want to go to the Matrix and live a fantastic
And
life.
that's perfect. That is
Cypher,
a perfect
yes.
example of this, because living in the dream is really comfortable. You can live in the dream your whole life and you're fine. There is no rule against it. And there's even a guarantee. Allah says in the Quran, if you live in the dream and you follow the rules of the dream, which is called Sharia, at the end, when you die, you will wake up and you'll be in paradise.
Ta-da!
Yeah.
You won.
You won.
Here's your prize.
Instead of having one wife to take care of, you have 72 or whatever.
You're in for it now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There is no penalty for living a life of sleep. For some of us, we want truth more than we want sleep. We would rather sit in a steel bucket and eat oatmeal and know the truth than dine at Maya's finest restaurant. Do you know Maya, the Hindu goddess of illusion and dreams? I'm convinced that she runs the world. But for some people, there is this compulsion, because if you live the life of the dream, what you don't get to know is God. That's what you trade off. You can trade an experience of the divine reality for the dream, or you can trade the dream for the experience of the divine reality. It's one or the other. You don't get both. And some of us would rather have the latter than the former. And I've enjoyed the dream. I've enjoyed the dream a lot. And for me, it's not enough. I want to know the awake state. I want to be awake in the dream and then awake from the dream. And for me, that is a driving force. And you'll find that the people who hang out around here will tend to have that driving force.
Mm.
And we try and chase the other people off. You know, the difference between Sufis and every other group out there in the world is you come to a sheikh and you go, hey, I want to be a Sufi. And he goes, no, you don't. Don't be a Sufi. Go join the Zen guys. They're a lot more fun. We're no fun. Because this is hard.
I remember Sheikh Tanner, when I met him, he was asking me, because he picked up on my interest, and he was like, what do you want? What is it that you want? And essentially, I told him, I want to know God. That's what I want. And that was how we moved forward with him as my first teacher.
Does that make sense?
But as with anything, to be motivated, you really have to want it. And I think when people realize, or they begin to have doubts, that's when they start waffling and they're like, I don't know, maybe I just want to play video games and work my 9 to 5 high paying job or low paying job that allows for lots of relaxation and screwing around and whatever, and there's no further desire than that. That's enough. It's easy enough.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts and questions? I asked because we're going to have to wrap up.
Yeah, we're sorry to just like take off, but we do have dinner on the way, which we're excited about.
And I'm watching the car come towards us.
Oh,
right
it's
now.
coming early. Yes, sure.
Okay, so my comment is mundane and boring. So it happened today. So my mother, as someone who's deeply asleep, and I love her dearly, she actually suffers because of this recreation of her suffering. That's her penalty for staying asleep.
Yeah.
I don't think, yeah. So she's now gone into a tears because my brother is bringing a dog into the house, and she doesn't want a dog in the house.
Mm.
And I have put it to her. I said, what if this dog is actually the key to opening people's hearts, and the people in the house will actually become more loving and kind because of this little toy poodle. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous, called Beano. And I thought, this is actually God working, saying, okay, they need something cute and lovable to be able to open their hearts. And I said to Mum, I said, there's an opportunity there. Instead of thinking the worst possible thing, this actually could be a great thing, because I've seen it work on other people that, you know, little things that you think are going to be difficult, pets or whatever, and you can only think of all the cleaning up and the washing up and the da-da-da-da-da-da, and it goes on and on and on, but they're only thinking about themselves. But that expression of God in really weird little ways. And I thought, this is fantastic. So when I was conversing with her, that connection, I have a strong connection with her, but I didn't want to get drawn into her suffering. So this is where staying awake and recognizing that magnetic pull of someone else's continuous suffering, and they want you to affirm that you can actually stay still despite all of that. So this is the everyday life, very boring, but this stuff happens all the time. And it's those little things where you can keep that stillness and then operate in a way that is an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and full of, I love this word in terms of this stuff, like curiosity, like, oh, this has a lot of possibility to it. Like, this could be awesome, as opposed to absolutely a nightmare. And being open to that allows that in.
And I really like that expression, that it's the ordinary daily life, no frills, expressions of God experiencing, being known through our actions, what we say, what we do, what can we perpetuate, that's important to me at the moment. So thank you for this talk. I love it.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I love hearing about someone's new puppy. That's fun. Puppy. All right.
Hey, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Khalil, you've been very
Khalil,
quiet.
yes, thank you. We had the same thought. I would love to yeah, what's coming up for you, Khalil?
Oh, I actually had a lot of things to respond to, something Mushtaq said, but I don't want to keep you guys from your dinners, so maybe I'll just sit on it and
We got a
reframe.
couple of minutes, so give me at least one of them.
Well, I just think that, yeah, it might be possible to stay asleep for a long time and maybe even go through several incarnations of sleep. But I'm of the opinion that Maya will eventually turn into Mother Kali and kick you in the butt to start getting awake, because everybody has to awaken at some point.
Maybe, but I've known a whole lot of people who slept their whole lives away.
In this incarnation, maybe.
Yeah, and that's the one that we
for.
got. I don't know about other
Right.
incarnations.
Right.
I have yet to see one. So all I can talk about is this life. And I know people who slept their whole way through this life and died asleep.
Oh, I do too. I just don't think that Allah is going to let those people off the hook. I think we're all headed eventually for the great Omega point, to borrow a term from Chardin.
It's a nice thought. And
God willing.
for this life, I don't think it makes any difference. As a matter of fact, Mr. Gurdjieff would say that's one of the reasons that people don't do the work, is because they think they have forever to do it in.
Holding out hope. That kind
Well,
of thing.
I think Gurdjieff would take an even darker move than the one you were presenting by saying that following Sharia would lead you to the paradise. I think Gurdjieff would say you're going to be food for the moon if you don't wake up.
Yeah, Gurdjieff would say that.
So that's a little harsher.
He's one to harsh mellows for sure. That's Gurdjieff. We are not, I mean, sometimes we can be pretty harsh too, but we are not quite as pessimistic, I would guess.
Although maybe some people enjoy being eaten by the moon. Who knows?
Kinky.
That might be paradise. We don't know, because as Mullah Nasruddin said, when the students came to him and asked, what happens after I die? Mullah said, I don't know. And they said, but Mullah, you're a saint. And he said, yes, but I'm not a dead saint. So I take that point of view of anything that happens before I die about after I die is speculation until I die. And then I ain't going to tell you guys. Just ain't going to do it.
My perspective is it's a distraction, and my time is better spent focusing on what's in front of me.
But everybody's different. So,
Yeah.
we are happy for everybody to do whatever it is that they want to do. If they want to wait till the next life or the life after, we'll keep our fingers crossed that they get one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, we should go. I see the car is approaching our street.
We are having Turkish food.
Yes.
So we're having
we are,
chicken kebabs.
Yeah, getting food from one of my favorite Turkish restaurants in the whole Bay Area. And it's a secret one. Hardly anybody knows about it.
It's always empty when we go, but it's so delicious.
Yeah, and they make kufta almost as good as my sheikh's wife. Almost. Not quite, but almost.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and hanging in there. And for those of you who made it through both talks today, you have soothed our hearts. All right. So we will see you next week, I guess.
Yeah, next time. All right. Take care. Bye, folks.
Bye, everybody.